Welcome to the Women in Engineering podcast. Today, we have the last episode in our discipline preview series. I'm joined by Mia Van Oirschot, who is a fourth-year chemical engineering student. Mia, how are you doing?
Hey, Rocky, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast today.
So excited to have you. I'm going to jump right into the questions and get started with first year. So what first year courses or experiences would give the best idea of what chemical is like?
That's a great question. And my immediate and initial answer is none of them. And I'll go back to give a better answer about this after. But the reason I say this is because there is a common misconception that first year chemistry is representative of what chemical engineering is like. And I cannot stress enough that it's very false. Chemical engineering is so much more than redox reactions and the titrations you learn in first year chemistry. And I can totally understand why a lot of students are turned off from chem eng solely based off this idea that this is what chemical engineering is like. But you really need to do your research, and I encourage you to do this research before prematurely counting it out as an option. Chemical engineering is more about industrial processes. There is heat and mass transfer, fluid flow. And in this course, in this program, we really take a more in-depth look at environmental and sustainability practices. Also, there's a lot of cool softwares that we use in this program to design engineering plants and processes. And also for those interested in coding more, we use MATLAB quite a bit. So I guess to go back to the initial question, what first year courses and experiences would give the best idea of what chem eng is like? I would honestly say engineering design 1050, which I know a lot of first year students kind of laugh at, but it really is such an important course, and it gives you a better idea what it's like working in a team of engineering students, and it'll really help prepare you for some of the group projects that you'll encounter in chem eng when designing some cool things.
I can't lie. I'm like rethinking my discipline choice now. I'm like, oh, I thought chemistry was all chem eng, but clearly I was wrong.
It's true. It's such a huge misconception for a lot of people, and I hear it all the time.
Yeah, and I feel like also 1302 is very math based as well. And I've heard that like chem eng is not necessarily like that.
Yeah, 1302, I would definitely say is more like your high school chemistry. And I know a lot of students might have been forced to take that as like a prerequisite to apply for engineering and might not have liked it. But I can't say enough. It's quite different. Although there are some similarities, maybe it's overall, there's a lot more going on than just first year chemistry.
Definitely good to keep in mind then for all of our listeners. And how are the profs in chem?
I would say the profs are awesome. Again, because chemical engineering is so diverse, you're going to encounter like a really big variety of professors who specialize in so many cool and diverse topics. I know there's professors more involved in environmental studies and that side of things, and professors more involved in the industrial side of things. And one thing I thought was really cool, if you remember when we were in person walking through ASEB, I remember seeing like 3 of my chemical engineering profs being featured on the TV for some of their groundbreaking research, which is really awesome and kind of says a lot about how incredible these professors are.
Wow. And I feel like also they'd definitely be good resources for just industry knowledge too then.
For sure. Some great people to just pick their minds and see what they're doing.
And how big are the classes typically in chemical?
Chem eng classes are generally pretty small relative to some of the other engineering classes. I'm pretty sure my year had about 40 to 45 students, and from what I've heard, they could probably range from 30 to 50-ish, which is great for those students who like a small, tight-knit community, and I think it's really great for learning in those kind of environments. It like takes some pressure off if you want to ask questions in class. I know sometimes it can be intimidating if there's like 100 students, but I really appreciate like the smaller community of the chemical engineering classes.
That's actually really nice. I feel like the smaller the class, the more like engaging it is. Okay, and then so what types of courses and projects are available to Chem students?
Um, that's a great question. And chemical engineering is, once again, I know I've said this a couple of times, but it's such a diverse profession. So you really get to try out so many different courses during your undergrad. Um, and some of the more notable courses that I can remember over the past 2 years, organic chemistry, which personally is one of my favorites. There's some sustainable engineering and environment courses, thermodynamics, which I know is really popular for those second year students. And in third year, there's some really cool process engineering courses where you get to do some cool group work and projects. You'll look more in depth about chemical industry plants, large scale reactions, plant design, maybe some engineering safety. And one of the cool projects that I remember was in a class called heat transfer. You get to work in a group design project to make a heat exchanger, which is a really good application-based project.
Damn, that sounds really cool, actually. Like even in mech, we learn about heat exchangers, but designing one sounds so fun.
Yeah, it was a really awesome project and a great way to experience working in a team too.
And so I feel like you've mentioned a lot of like different types of courses and projects and things. So are there any options to specialize within ChemEng?
Yeah, there is. I know there's one area to specialize that I was looking into. I'm not in this specialization course, but I did a little bit of research so I can talk about it. In your third year, you can choose to do a specialization in biochemical and environmental engineering. I believe you still do most of the mainstream chemical engineering courses with your peers, but you'll take electives more related to renewable energy, bioenergy and biofuels, and environmental pollution control. One thing that I can talk about that I'll know a little bit more about is if you do Chem-Eng, you can apply in your second year to do the biomedical dual degree, as Chem-Eng is one of the 4 core disciplines you can pair it with. And that's a 5-year program, so you'd graduate in 5 years with 2 engineering degrees.
Damn. Yeah. And that's like a super, I feel like, applicable option with chem as well, just because you are taking organic chemistry and all those other courses.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's a great way to seamlessly combine those 2 degrees because you do take biochem in your second year of chemistry, and it just relates a lot to some of the biology you'll learn in the upper years too.
Yeah, that sounds like a really awesome option. Oh my goodness, I almost combined those words there. And so what career paths then does ChemEng typically lead to, and what are the job and co-op prospects for the degree?
Yeah, great question. Once again, I think the main thing I can say here is just chemical engineering is so diverse and there truly is such a broad range of job opportunities out there before and after graduation. One thing I remember, I used to work as a camp counselor for Western Engineering, and I remember the kids would always be so excited and thought it was so cool when I told them, as a chemical engineer, you could do something as cool as developing new ice cream flavors or making up the chemical formula for Advil or making the plastic that made up the chair that you're sitting in right now. And that list goes on, of course. But personally, last summer, I got to do a co-op at Ford Motor Company doing research on car batteries. And someone might initially think a job in that field might be more related to a mechanical engineering degree. But the truth of the matter is chemical engineers are everywhere and there's so many opportunities to apply your knowledge. For example, like energy storage, different elemental properties, and a big one that industries are really needing to prioritize, which you've probably heard, is sustainability. And like all those pieces of knowledge can come from your degree in chemical engineering.
Wow, sounds really just like a lot of options based on what you're interested in, which I'm sure is nice for anyone considering it.
yeah, that was one of the big drawing factors for me. I really like the diversity of it.
And what are some tips you would have to succeed in Chem Eng?
Um, that's a great question. And I feel like as a fourth year student, I should by now have a good list of tips to give out. But these tips might not necessarily be specific to chemical engineering, but for success, I really encourage students to go to office hours, go to class, and raise your hand in class. If you have a question, it's likely someone else does too. And that's what your professors and your TAs are there for. That's kind of all I can think about other than make study groups too. It's the best way to hold yourself accountable when you're working with others and making sure you keep up with the course content. And this is more relevant to today's times with COVID. If you have online asynchronous courses, it's really easy to fall behind. I know that firsthand, but you really need to designate times every week to work on those lectures because it's really going to bite you in the butt if you leave all those asynchronous lectures for the last minute before your exam.
As someone who did that, like for every single Lin-Alg test, I can say with certainty, it is not the way to go. It's not worth
I think
it.
we've all been in that boat at one point during our degree. So
You just hate yourself like the night before your test and you're like, why would I do this to myself? Why did you like watch Netflix 2 weeks ago when you should have just done your lectures?
oh yeah, too many times I've been there. 100%.
And do you have any advice just for students going into chem or students already in chem?
Yeah, my piece of advice would say do it. If you're on the fence, if something's holding you back from pursuing a chemical engineering degree, I know I'm obviously going to be biased because it's the only engineering degree that I know and I think it's awesome. But truly and honestly, there's so much to love. No matter what your interests are, there's a place for you in chemical engineering. The world needs chemical engineers now, as it always does. And we can really use our knowledge in sustainable engineering practices to ensure that these engineering industries can preserve our world for many years to come and make sure that we hold everyone accountable.
Yeah, honestly, some awesome advice. I think we just get so caught up in the like, oh, what if, and oh, I don't know if I'll like it, or I'm scared, or just like throw out the fear and just try it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I feel that chemical engineering, and this is funny being that this is the last podcast, is often forgotten as an engineering degree, but don't count it out before you really do your research and talk to an upper year to see maybe it's something you'll like and you'll really find a big interest in.
I also do apologize. It was the last one. That was not intentional.
Oh
Okay.
my goodness, no worries. I think it's great. I'm very happy to be featured no matter what point of the timeline.
And a little bit off topic of Chem specifically, but are there any extracurricular activities that are either discipline specific or non-specific that you'd like to touch on?
Yes, and this is a bit of a shameless plug moment because I'm on the exec team of this team this year. But I really, really encourage you to get involved in the chemical ECAR team. This is chemical engineering specific, and actually it's Western's first and only chemical engineering based team. And the goal of this team is to build a chemical energy based car to travel and stop at a specified distance. For those interested in chemical engineering, it's a great extracurricular to get involved with. And it's a great way to get hands-on experience with chemicals in a lab with a project that you and your teammates designed yourself. And in my opinion, there's nothing more meaningful than a project that you're genuinely interested in, not just part of your academics and something that's being graded as a lab mark. And it's even cooler, you get to take this project to competition and compete against universities across Canada and the US. But overall, and not necessarily related to chemical engineering, I do encourage everyone to get involved in at least one extracurricular activity, club or team. It's just a great opportunity to meet other people and really diversify your experiences in your undergrad because, as you know, you only do undergrad once, and it's just a great time in your life to put yourself out there and really gain a greater repertoire of experiences.
I'm also going to just add like one little thing to that because I was just talking to a first year student literally yesterday. And clubs are also a great place to make friends. I feel like with online school, especially this semester, it's so hard to just meet people. And in first year, you don't really know anyone. But it's just like join a club, join a team, meet some people, make some friends. You'll see them once a week, twice a week, whatever. And it's just good to like expand who you know if you're struggling with that.
Absolutely, yes. For all or any first years listening out there, or upper years as well, really, really, really encourage you to get involved in a club or a team. You won't regret it.
Definitely not. So that kind of just wraps up my questions. Is there anything else you'd like to maybe just add?
I think we covered some pretty large grounds today. But in conclusion, if anyone has any specific questions about chemical engineering or maybe the biomedical dual degree, I'd be more than happy to answer your questions over Instagram or by email. And yeah, go ChemEng, really encourage it.
And Mia's links will be in the description box below on all the listening platforms. So that's how you can reach out to her. Yeah, that's pretty much everything. Mia, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
And to all our listeners, I hope you have a great rest of